buy.
Procedures.
I'm like, whoa, that's a radical idea. And she had her reasons,
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just the idea, even this is the last thing I'm ever going to buy.
Plus, I like looking and knowing I've had something for quite a while and haven't had to just go buy something else. Whatever.
Well, I'm sort of I'm the type who goes to used stores when I want something. If I think, oh, I need a blah blah blah, I go to a used store first,
Yeah. Yeah.
Except if it's something like brand new. And
Well, that's like my oldest daughter and my grandson. They love going to the dollar store.
yeah,
I mean, they get like it's
Yeah.
just fun. It's the fun place to go.
it's fun. It's funner than other places, as they say. As these kids say, funner.
Funner.
I love red.
Can
on
we
her,
check
don't we?
if somebody's out there to open the door when he's ready? But I don't know exactly how old. I think he's like 74.
It's in the
It's on the cover. It's on the cover.
cupboard.
Yeah.
Look who's here. I told you she'd be back.
You weren't talking about me.
No, not today, but
You guys need AV help?
Your ears burning?
AV help?
Wow.
Yeah, our overhead. How do you
I
get
said we-
the?
Oh, were you guys seriously talking about me? Seriously?
I said, were your ears burning?
Oh, I don't know, no.
I wasn't talking about you.
We did have a nice lunch. I got a bunch of stuff. Last night when I was here and we got the little message about lunch, I realized, first of all, I don't wake up easy, so I better go get things out of last night. So I went into the nearest
hit you on the shoulder with a stick, you start to throw it around.
Yes, yes.
You give you a stick to whack me.
I was just about to say it's warmer now, that's bad. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, saying,
They have different socks, because these are the heavy socks, different socks. Take the socks off, that's how I
That'll
raise
cool
it.
you off.
I've always been called the human furnace. My whole life, the human furnace. What? It's just right, but it's going to be bad in a minute.
I'm suffering in both directions and it's just right.
Which way am I going to go?
Yeah, when it's just right, you're suffering.
So you
Both suffer.
you read the Alan Wallace book out there, the
That
one
one?
that yeah. Doesn't it give you go through the levels?
That one might. I haven't read that one in a long time.
Because I got it at one point aspirationally thinking, oh, I can try harder to meditate, and it's too hard. That book is too hard.
You know, I was a little kind of calming down. Something they're calling it basic awareness now sometimes, or mindfulness.
Yeah.
Like the FECW, the foundation, the 16 guidelines.
Oh yeah.
Basic awareness. But advanced is really more basic. You know? There's
Well, it's like
basic, that's
discovering
basic.
Buddhism and the basic program.
But the more, yeah, but the more advanced the meditation, the more fun it is.
We need the gong to wake it up.
Yeah, we need to go. Oh, there it is. The juice. The guys in the back. So you may feel a little bit lethargic because you just had food. It's warm. So our finishing time, Donna, is what time? 4 or 4:30?
4:30.
4:30. So it's just after 1:30. So we maybe take a break halfway, give some, so you can get some either movement or put some water on your face or get some of that good American caffeine. Well, most of our caffeine is from somewhere else,
Yeah.
South America, or
I'll go out for it, put in orders.
put in orders for caffeine.
Hawaii is the only state that grows coffee.
Oh, is that right? Ah, I didn't know that. So almost all our coffee comes from outside the United States, unless it's Hawaiian coffee. Oh, okay. That's good to know. I don't know how good it is to know, but anyway.
My work is trivial pursuit.
Come again?
My work is trivial pursuit, but
Yeah, as important, yeah. But for her, it's not that important. Okay, so another background information about the Jataka Tales and the stories of the Buddha's lives, past lives as Bodhisattva. They are meant in general to if you look closely, you may be able to figure out what level of practice he was at. What do I mean by that? When you first enter into, let me ask you this, if you know. At what point do you enter the Bodhisattva path? It will say the path that leads to enlightenment is called the Bodhisattva path. Does anyone know? I bet Bill knows. He's, no? Who knows? What's the criteria, or I say criterion, of having entered the Bodhisattva path? When do you become a Bodhisattva? When you take Bodhisattva vow? Some people believe that. Some traditions, Tibetan traditions, say, "Oh, you've taken Bodhisattva vow. You're a Bodhisattva." It's like not really. Anyone?
You said. I'm sorry.
There was one behind you.
Clarifying the question. So you said you become a Bodhisattva, or you enter the Bodhisattva path, or are those the same thing? There.
You say if you become a Bodhisattva when you enter the Bodhisattva path. So it's synonymous. What is the demarcation of having become a Bodhisattva or having entered the Bodhisattva path?
First bhumi, that's just a step.
No. First bhumi is you're an Arya Bodhisattva. On the first bhumi, and I'll get into that to a minute, you are an Arya Bodhisattva. You've realized emptiness as a Bodhisattva. But you can be a Bodhisattva. You are a Bodhisattva before that. You said you studied a lot of Buddhism. No. Okay, come on.
Are you a Bodhisattva when you can actually keep the Bodhisattva vows?
Well, it depends on what you mean by keep the Bodhisattva vows, because there are different enumerations of the Bodhisattva vows. There are different lists. Drawn from sutras, so the Bodhisattva shouldn't do this, shouldn't do this, should do this. But Lama Zopa Rinpoche said the real demarcation of keeping the Bodhisattva vows is to not have one moment of self-cherishing thought. Now so even you keep the verbally, don't criticize others, well, all these different Bodhisattva vows, the root vows, the secondary vows. From a very technical point of view, if you still have self-cherishing thought, you've broken the Bodhisattva vows. So you might not actually be able to keep those until, the 8th bhumi, because you still have some vestiges of self-cherishing to that. But my question still remains, when do you enter the Bodhisattva path? When do you become a Bodhisattva? It's not, I don't mean by when time, but what's the demarcation? At what point can you say in someone's spiritual career that they are a Bodhisattva? Oh. No. You're just guessing now.
Well, I was going to say realization of the 6 perfections, but
no,
since...
okay.
Yeah.
So look at it this way. You are a Bodhisattva when you have spontaneous bodhicitta. Do you know what bodhicitta is? What is bodhicitta? Altruistic wish.
To help others.
No, not enough.
No.
More precise.
The altruistic wish to reach enlightenment, to be of benefit to all sentient beings.
Kinda.
Kinda?
Yeah, it's kind of general. But I remember when I visited Taiwan only once, many, many years ago. Lama Yeshe had been invited to some conference, and he couldn't go. He asked me to go. And I went down from Taipei to Kaohsiung. Anyone have been to Taipei? Anyway, big monastery there. And it was really wonderful to see all of these Chinese monks and nuns in that Chinese Mahayana. It's kind of like a college, Buddhist college. And most of them spoke English very well. And I'd ask them about the 12 links of dependent origination, the 4 noble truths, even some points like the 16 aspects of the 4 noble truths. They knew. But I asked them, what's bodhicitta? And it was like, bodhicitta is like the sky, or, this is kind of a little vague. So one of the interesting things about Tibetan Buddhism, as it brought a very precise, drew from the Indian presentation of Mahayana Buddhism in the Nalanda tradition, the great monastery in India, very precise understanding of the scriptures. This is all understood in Indian Buddhism also, but for instance, the text would kind of, like there's a famous verse in the Abhisamaya Alamkara, one great text, Indian text, composed by Maitreya Buddha, that when a Sangha, not Atisha, a Sangha went to Tushita heaven, where Maitreya is now the regent, it's sort of like the reigning Dharma king there. He will come down many eons from now when the Dharma is gone, Shakyamuni's doctrine is gone from the earth. He will be the next universal teacher, Maitreya. So Maitreya gave some hint. He gave 5 texts to a Sangha, one of which is called Abhisamaya Alamkara, ornament of clear realizations, you could say. So in that there's one verse, very famous verse, Jangshub Semni Keba, Semke Pani Shendon Shir, Yangdak Zokbe Jangshub De. Just 2 lines. Semke Pani means, Semke means, is another synonym for bodhicitta. Semke means the generation of the mind, creation of the mind. It means the mind which is oriented toward enlightenment. It's another synonym in the Prajnaparamita Sutras for bodhicitta. So it's essentially you could say bodhicitta is, Semke Pani, Shendon Shir, for the welfare of others, Jangshub Zokbe Jangshub De, to desire, to aim for full enlightenment. So that kind of, what Venerable said is kind of encompassing that. To aim for full enlightenment out of the desire to benefit for the welfare of sentient beings. Shendon, the welfare of others, or the aim of others. Not for your own aim, you're achieving that. That's called bodhicitta, or mind generation. And there's debate about that. So there's 2 factors. One is the aim to achieve enlightenment. The other factor is the desire to help sentient beings. I don't know if you're familiar with the Heart Sutra. Some of you recite sometime. If you have a good translation and all the words are translated, there's when they talk about Avalokiteshvara, it says, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. So he's a Bodhisattva, Mahasattva. What's the difference? So Bodhisattva is, in some of the commentaries, they say, why? It means the same thing. Mahasattva is a Bodhisattva, or Bodhisattva is a Mahasattva. What does that mean? Bodhisattva is emphasizing one of these 2 aims of bodhicitta. It's emphasizing the aim for bodhi. Is a courageous person, a sattva, here means not just sentient being, but a courageous person aiming for bodhi, bodhisattva. Mahasattva is emphasizing the other thing about welfare of others. He's a great being, a sattva, courageous being, aiming for the great goal, Mahasattva. So it's kind of giving both flavors of that definition of bodhicitta. So when you have, right now, we may be able to develop bodhicitta with effort. What we might call it artificial bodhicitta, or you might not call it artificial bodhicitta. You might meditate for a long time. I've worked for myself for so many eons, it never got me anywhere. All these other beings have been my mother numberless lifetimes. They've been kind to me even when they were enemies, because they gave me the chance to practice patience, developing love and compassion for them, and developing a desire to alleviate their suffering. The only way I can do that is to achieve enlightenment. Some logic like this, and you might have some moments, some period of time when you have that thought, I must achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. That's called bodhicitta. But that is not yet ingrained in your mind. It's not yet spontaneous. When, through familiarity, meditating through effort like that, what we might call artificial or, what's the word when you make some manufactured bodhicitta, when it becomes at the point becomes spontaneous and always there, that's the definition of having attained actual bodhicitta. You are now an actual bodhisattva. You have entered the bodhisattva path. So the demarcation of entering the bodhisattva path is the generation of spontaneous bodhicitta. Interestingly, what's the demarcation of having entered the Hinayana path? The Hinayana path, yeah. Oh, no guesses. No. Only if you know. You know? You're just more guesses. Otherwise, you just go around everyone's. My opinion is, no, I'll tell you. Similar to the definition of the demarcation of entering the Mahayana path, also you could say entering the Mahayana path is the same as entering the Bodhisattva path, synonymous. Okay? Bodhisattva path, entering the Bodhisattva path, entering the Mahayana path, the moment of becoming actually a Bodhisattva, all of that is when you develop spontaneous bodhicitta, right? Entering the Hinayana path, the moment that you develop spontaneous renunciation of cyclic existence. Have you heard of renunciation? Do you know what that means? When we talk in the Gelugpa tradition, Lama Tsongkhapa was exhorted by Manjushri to write a text about the Lan Rim, a short one called The Three Principles of the Path, three principal aspects of the path, you could say, or the three principles of the path. And they are renunciation, bodhicitta, the wisdom that realizes emptiness. Have you heard of that before? Okay. So, renunciation, bodhicitta, wisdom of emptiness. Right view, you could say. So renunciation, the bodhisattva also has renunciation. Some people might think, oh, bodhisattvas don't care about escaping from samsara, which is the renunciation. We think of two parts also. Remember bodhicitta, out of the desire to benefit sentient beings, aiming for enlightenment. Renunciation is a little similar kind of way, out of seeing the absolute shortcomings of cyclic existence, that it's only the nature of suffering, desiring nirvana, desiring liberation. Do you see some similarity there? So twofold. So that can also be kind of artificial at first. You have certain kind of renunciation, but when that becomes authentic and spontaneous, you've entered the Hinayana path. When we say path, it doesn't mean like some place that's over in Syracuse, New York, or, oh no, it's in Santa Cruz. Mahayana is in Santa Cruz, Hinayana path is over in Thailand. It's not like that. It's not a place. It's a pathway of the mind that leads you to that goal. That we say the Hinayana path that leads to nirvana, Mahayana path that leads to enlightenment. Each of those paths that lead to nirvana and the Mahayana path that leads to enlightenment have what are called 5 stages, 5 paths. Do you know that? The 5 paths? Oh, have you heard? This is good. Maybe just some remedial in between the stories. So you may have heard of them. You know, Venerable, 5 paths? Same names for the Hinayana path and the Mahayana path, but slightly different definitions of them. Path of accumulation. Path of preparation or connection. Generally they translate as preparation. The path of what? Seeing. The path of meditation or cultivation. And the path of no more learning, or you could say graduation. You don't have to learn anymore. You've reached the goal of nirvana or enlightenment. That 5th path means you've become an arhat, you've achieved nirvana, or you become Buddha, you've achieved enlightenment. So the second one again? So path of accumulation first, or collection, path of preparation, or could be translated as connection, path of seeing, path of meditation or cultivation of what you've seen on the path of seeing, and then the path of no more learning when you've achieved that goal. So on the Mahayana path, on the path of accumulation, it can be said that any bodhisattva on that path has bodhicitta within their mind stream, because that's the demarcation of entering that path. They have bodhicitta, spontaneous bodhicitta. It's not going to fade away generally. It can degenerate over time in some extreme cases until you reach a certain point on the path of accumulation. I think maybe the second or third level, I can't remember. So there's a famous story of Shariputra. You know Shariputra? You heard? Okay, yeah, it's not that we know personally. Oh yeah, Shariputra, I met him at the Dalai Lama's teaching. And Shariputra was one of the two main disciples of Buddha. He wasn't there from the very beginning. He and his dear friend Moggallana, they had made a childhood pact that they wanted to reach moksha. They would search all the various teachers in India, and if one of them found the path, he was going to tell the other one, and they would do together. So they came after the Buddha had already achieved enlightenment, after he had some of the first 5 disciples and some other disciples, and Shariputra was on the path one day, and he saw this one monk, so there's like aura about him, just beautiful and calm, and something. And he came up and he asked, Venerable Sir, what, are you an enlightened one? And this monk's name was Asvajit. In Pali, Asaji, maybe you've heard. He was one of the first 5 disciples when the Buddha first turned the wheel of Dharma. Do you know, Bill? The 5 disciples? One of them was called, in Sanskrit, Asvajit. The Pali simplifies that to Asaji. So he had already heard the teachings of Buddha, perhaps was already an arhat. And Shariputra said, are you, the enlightened one? He said, no, I'm just a disciple. And he said, can you give me his teachings? And he said, no, I can't do justice. And he said, just give me something. Like us, Just give me something, some tidbit. And so Asvajit told Shariputra, Ye dharma hetu prabhava hetu teshan. Do you know Sanskrit? Or maybe you recognize it. Hey, ye dharma hetu prabhava hetu teshan. Tatagato haivadat teshan sayo naroda evam vadi vadi shramanaya soha. So, which became enshrined as, we call it if you put an om at the beginning and a svaha at the end, it's called the mantra of dependent origination. We say in so many of our rituals. But it was actually said to Shariputra, is saying, of those dharmas, of those phenomena that arise from causes, the Tathagata explained the cause. And he also explained the nirodha, the cessation of those. In other words, the delusions. Mainly talking about the delusions. Delusions have causes, how they arise in the mind, the Buddha explained. Also, he explained how to cease them, the cessation of the delusions, how to achieve nirvana, how to achieve, spiritual development. So Shariputra became, he told Moggallana, they eventually became the principal disciples of the Buddha. Do we have a tanka of Shakyamuni? Oh yeah, see, this tanka in the corner, you may not see, if you get a chance to look later, on the bottom, the Shakyamuni is in the middle, at the top, and on the bottom and the 2 sides are 2 monks holding staffs. There are, on the Buddha's right, I think Shariputra, on his left, on the Buddha's left is Moggallana. So they were the 2 principal disciples afterwards. Always, in fact, it's considered whenever Buddhas appear in the world as universal teachers, they always have 2 main disciples. One of the reasons that the representations of Lama Tsongkhapa also have Gyaltsab Je and Kedrup Je as those 2 principal disciples, like elevating the Buddha, elevating Tsongkhapa to be like that, like a Buddha. So Shariputra was not a bodhisattva. Shariputra was one of the Shravakas, the hearers who were aiming for nirvana. Right? You know that, Venerable? Yeah. Shariputra, one of the hearers, Shravakas. So he was the foremost in wisdom of the disciples. Remember I mentioned in the Heart Sutra, he's interrogating Avalokiteshvara. I know, like, he doesn't say the words, but I kind of know about wisdom in the hearer's point of view. Selfless as a person, I'm best, foremost in wisdom of the Buddha's disciples, but how do you Bodhisattvas practice? So in a previous life, Shariputra had actually entered the Bodhisattva path. That means he developed spontaneous bodhicitta. But out of his enthusiasm, he made a mistake. Before he reached the level of stability of bodhicitta, at a certain point, the bodhicitta is said to be like gold. Gold is kind of immutable. It doesn't tarnish the way other things do. You can mold it into other things. So gold-like bodhicitta. Before he reached that stage, he was a bodhisattva. He was practicing generosity, and some evil spirit or god came just to test him out and said, I really need something for my practice is absolutely urgent. And Shariputra asked him what it was, and he said, I need a right hand. And Shariputra thought, so many lifetimes I've practiced for myself alone. Now here's a chance to give my body for the sake of others. So he cut off his right hand with great pain, because he hadn't reached the point yet where he could feel no pain. So with great reluctance, he took the right hand and was handing it to this person who was manifesting as a Brahmin. It was some spirit. And the Brahmin said, how dare you? You're handing that to me with your left hand, which is where you would clean off your defecation. In India, in general, even to this day, people in India, they always offer something with the right hand. You never offer with your left hand, because maybe they still use their left hand. So it's in that tradition. And so Shariputra, I was going to say it like this, but his right hand is gone, so it must have gone like this. How can I work for sentient beings when they're so evil like this? And because his bodhicitta had not become stabilized, it degenerated. So he'd lost the path. In the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, which many of you are familiar with, what do they call it? The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. There's a verse that alludes to this in the beginning. If you read the commentaries, the verse just says, only the omniscient one knows how someone who once generated the mind of bodhicitta can eventually achieve, and gives that up. How can they eventually ever again reach some holy state? He's referring to Shariputra, because it's like amazing. He gave up the bodhicitta, which is like a very heavy obscuration to the mind. Now I'm beginning to feel the remnants of old age dementia. I forgot why I was telling this story about Shariputra. What was the?
We were talking about Hinayana.
The 5 paths, yeah. So Shariputra had actually entered into the Bodhisattva path, but he hadn't gone far enough in so that it was stable. There's certain points, demarcations along the line when you reach something and you won't fall back from that level. So he hadn't reached that point yet, so he left. So on the path of accumulation, you have bodhicitta, spontaneous bodhicitta. At a certain point on that path also, it becomes stable. And you're accumulating merit. You already have bodhicitta, so you're not accumulating merit to generate bodhicitta, but you're accumulating merit to be able to realize emptiness. When you have, on that path, developed shamatha, you've heard of shamatha, right? What's it called? Tranquil abiding, calm abiding, kind of a samadhi, unified with vipassana, or special insight. How else do they translate? Special insight. When you have a union of that, tranquil abiding and special insight, meditating on emptiness, you enter into what's the next path called the path of preparation. It's called, if you call it preparation, it's preparing you to have the path to see emptiness directly. It's preparing you for the path of seeing. That's kind of etymology if you use the word preparation. If you say connection, it's the path that connects you to the path of seeing. So on this path, you have a mental image of emptiness that is factually correct, but it's not a direct image, like still some veils, some obscurations of the mind due to you're realizing emptiness via a mental image. Do you know what that means? We talked before, when I was here before, we talked about mind and mental factors. There's the mind, the mental consciousness has a couple of varieties of experience. One is called direct perception, which we rarely have with our mental consciousness. The most part, our minds, our mental consciousness deal with knowing via conception, conceiving of something, thinking of it. Like right now, can you think of your mother's face? You're not actually perceiving your mother's face. In one sense, you could say you're knowing your mother's face by means of some image in your mind. You might say it's a memory of having seen her, or if someone was described to you. You never met Richard Gere, or someone says he looks like this, you could develop a mental image. Even among mental images, there are some that are based on having actually perceived something, some that are based on just description. But at any rate, at this point, you have just a mental image of emptiness, which is correct, but it's not the actual vision. When you have a direct realization of emptiness, you transfer from the path of preparation to the path of seeing. You see, not with your eyeballs, you see with, like you might say, the wisdom eye, the eye of prajna, or the eye of wisdom. It doesn't mean a physical organ. You see emptiness directly, as though, in the same way you see something with direct perception with your eyes, an apple in your hand or avocado in your hand. And then once you've realized emptiness directly, it's at that point you become an Arya being, a superior being. Remember you were asking, and it's at that point you enter the first bhumi. So from the path of seeing, you enter the first bhumi. All the rest of the 10 bhumis are on the path of meditation, the different levels. And on each of those levels, the Arya Bodhisattva, now the one that's realized emptiness, has a special practice of one of the 10 perfections. You usually hear the 6 perfections, right? So there's 4 additional ones after you've completed the perfection of wisdom. So in the Jataka Tales, one can sometimes surmise or deduce what bhumi the Bodhisattva was on by what perfection he was practicing, what he had a special practice on. So I'm going to read now one. Let me see if I find it here. I have some written down here, some that are in the index. Oh, no, there it is. Is it here? Sorry, I didn't write down the ones here to find the... Maybe it's here. This is another compendium of Jatakas. This one we were reading from before was one of the 6 texts of the Kadampas called the Jataka Mala. It was composed by Aryasura. This is another compendium of Jatakas composed by a great Indian that has more Jatakas in it. It has 108, I think. Yes, 108. This is just an English title. It's not that in Sanskrit or Tibetan. Leaves of the Heaven Tree. This is also published by Dharma Publishing. Very, very good companion to that. And I think the one I'm looking for is here, but I'm not sure. 19. Anyway, we'll see it. I have it in okay. Yeah, I think that's it. So the word for patience, do you know the word for patience in Sanskrit? The sage Kshanti's demonstration of patience. K-S with a, let's go to K-S-H-A-N-T-I. Do you know what patience is in Tibetan? Sopa. I remember Lama Yeshe Lama Yeshe was Lama Sopa Rinpoche's teacher, right? His guru. Sometimes Lama Yeshe would be kind of wrathful with Lama Zopa, not because he was angry with Lama Zopa, but Lama Zopa was kind of like like in a comedy team, one guy acts as the foil for the other. What is that called? The fall guy or the straight man or something. Lama Zopa would act perplexed by something, and Lama Yeshe would, say something harsh to him, and he would also say, Sopa, but it was for our benefit. It was like Lama wouldn't say that directly to us. It was a way of saying it to us by criticizing Lama Zopa. Lama Zopa had no faults, So Shanti in Sanskrit means sopa in Tibetan. Same word, right? Just a different, like dog and perro or something like that. So in this text, this is on page 193, the sage Kshanti's demonstration of patience. And this begins also with a little, just a line, a teaching in accord with the perfection of patience. So this would mean he was on the first bhumi, after reaching the third path of seeing, there's the first bhumi, and then the second, third, fourth, fifth. On the second bhumi, first bhumi, you have a special practice of the perfection of giving, which some of these exemplify giving. Second bhumi, you have a special practice of the perfection of ethics or morality. Third bhumi, a special practice in the perfection of patience. So one can surmise he may very well have been on the third bhumi in this explanation. Also, this book is very beautiful. It has kind of like a tanka of each of these 108 stories. Each one has its own kind of tanka. Do you see that? Incredibly beautiful. And on the back side, it explains different, it's referring to different there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of the Jatakas in that tanka. So I think the first one is this little part in the upper left-hand corner of that is talking about this, I think. We'll see. The Bhagavan was staying in a forest, wilderness, teaching the Dharma. On one occasion he smiled, and Shakra then asked the Buddha why he was smiling. And the Buddha answered, the Tathagata does not smile with, Shakra asked him, he said, the Tathagata does not smile without cause, he continued. The Buddha replied, I smiled in remembrance of a previous life. This is how it was. Long ago, a king named Chandana Sandalwood lived in a lush valley bounded by forest solitudes. In the forest lived a sage called Shanti, delight in patience, since he was totally without anger and abided in meditation. One day Chandana, the king, together with his many queens and their attendants, or his harem, right? His harem, went to the forest to disport themselves. I don't know what that means. Disport. Simply have fun. In a forest meadow, Chandana, wearied by all the delights of the day, sat down to rest, kind of nodding off. His queens and their attendants went further into the forest where they saw the sage Shanti. Immediately feeling faith in him, they bowed down before him and humbly sat in front of him. The king, going in search of his queen, so he woke up, they're not around. Where'd they go? He's looking around for them. Saw his harem seated in front of the sage. At once he became fiercely jealous and in anger cut off all the sage's limbs. The sage did not react to the king's action, but continued sitting peacefully as before. After the king returned home with his entourage, all the sages who lived in the forest gathered together and began to curse the king. So Shanti had not died yet. He just cut off his limbs. Shanti said to them, "I do not feel even the slightest anger for what was done to me. Do not curse the king. If it is true that I do not feel even the slightest anger, may my limbs be as before." As soon as he said this, his limbs reattached themselves to his body, and all his wounds were healed. The king, however, came down with boils all over his body, died, and was reborn in hell. Then the Buddha said, "I was the sage Shanti at that time, and Devadatta was the king Chandana." Devadatta was his cousin, right? Who always was in competition with him. Shakya and the rest of the assembly developed great faith in the armor of patience, after which Shakya returned to his heavenly realm. So this is a very short, just an anecdote of that longer presentation. I'll read another version from the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish. So I've read two from the Jataka Mala. One, there's a very, very short one from this compendium, The Leaves of the Heaven Tree, that has 108 Jataka Tales. And I'm going to read one from another collection of tales that's called the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish. Very, very popular in Tibet and Mongolia. Obviously shorter, and telling similar kind of stories, but particularly you can get an idea from the telling about things that people did in the past when they were foolish, creating negative karma to suffer now, and the wise at that time creating virtuous karma when they profited later. So it's kind of like from that point of view, called the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish. So this is, in this collection, a similar tale to that one, either referring to another life when the Buddha was also called the Rishi of Patience. You know the word Rishi? You've heard Rishi. Yeah. Maharishi. Great Rishi. You've heard it in that context. Rishi is someone, it's like a saint who lives in isolation, often meditation, and who, if they were to give a prediction, say something, it's like you can trust it. It's like exactly true, whatever they say. They never lie. And if they make a prediction, it will come true. If they curse you, forget about it. It's going to happen. So you don't want to mess with rishis, right? So Shantavadin, or the patient rishi. Thus I have heard at one time, the enlightened one was residing in bamboo grove of the Kalandaka bird in the city of Rajgriha. You've heard of bamboo grove, maybe? Yeah. At that time, soon after he had attained supreme enlightenment, the Buddha ordained the 5-headed Kaundinya, and thereafter Nadi Kashyapya and 1,000 brothers. No, I said the 5-headed. the Buddha ordained the 5 first disciples, headed by Kaundinya. Kaundinya, so there were the first 5 disciples, they were all members of the court. Remember some of the disciples, Devadatta, Ananda, Upali, were his cousins or relatives. They came to become monks. Even before that, some of the ministers who were had been present when Siddhartha was about to be born, and they made prophecies about what would happen. 4 of those ministers came later. 4 of them made predictions. Either your son will be a universal teacher, like a Buddha, or he will be a Buddha, enlightened one, or he will be a universal monarch, Chakravartin, to have dominion over all the countries. So the king wanted his son to be that rather than a Buddha, or. One of the ministers, Kaundinya, the first one, actually was the only one that prophesized. He didn't have either or. He said he would become a Buddha. So the 4 ministers and the 5th one, they came and were the first, when the Buddha studied with different Vedic scholars, concentration, how to achieve moksha, wasn't satisfied with him. They were with him, those 5 ministers, and later they were the 5 that went with him in the 6 years of ascetic practice. They were his 5 disciples. Then when he went off, followed the middle way, they got disgusted, they left him, they went to Varanasi. When he achieved enlightenment, they were the first 5 that he would teach the Dharma to, so he sought them out. So it says, after he had attained supreme enlightenment, the Buddha ordained the 5, those 5 disciples, headed by Kaundinya. And thereafter, and one of those 5 was also Asaji, who I said to you, told this abbreviated teaching to Shariputra, Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Sashan. So all of them had some interesting story about them. And thereafter, Nadi Kasyapya and 1,000 brethren. So at this point, the Buddha had already ordained many disciples. After he had adorned many others, and many were endeavoring in the Dharma, all the people of the city of Rajagriha rejoiced with the exceedingly great joy and lauded the enlightened one thus. The Buddha, the Tathagata, has come to this world, and this is greatly marvelous as he aids all peoples and nations. Rajagriha, what does that mean? Raja, king. Griha. City, the royal city. And they also said the first monk was Kaundinya, because of the 5 first disciples, he was the first one to achieve, when the Buddha taught the 4 Noble Truths to them, he was the first one to achieve nirvana. The first monk was Kaundinya, and he and Nadi Kasyapya, because they were the first to meet the Buddha, are now the first to taste the nectar of the Dharma. When the monks heard this, they reported it in detail to the Buddha. The Lord, the Buddha, the Bhagavan, then said to them, in times long past, with a firm mind, I made the vow that when I attained enlightenment, I would aid them before all others. Hearing the Buddha's words, the monks asked, Lord, we beg you to relate how in times long past you made a mighty vow with a mind of compassion. The Buddha said, listen well, monks, and bear it in mind, and I shall tell you. This is important for us. Listen well and bear it in mind. Don't be like the cup with a hole in the bottom when you hear the teachings. Oh yeah, I heard the teaching, but what was it about? I don't know. I was thinking about. I was checking my Instagram, and So it's always like that. Listen well and bear it in mind. Don't forget it. I shall tell you. Long eons ago, monks, eons past counting, past reckoning, past conceiving, beyond telling, there lived the king of Benares by the name of Kalinga. At that time, in the mountains of that country, there dwelt a rishi. Remember this saint-like person who turned out was the previous life of Shakyamuni, by the name of Shantivadan, who lived together with 500 disciples and applied himself to meditation on patience. Upon a certain occasion, the king, together with his queen, ministers, and entourage, went to the mountains to enjoy the scenery and amuse themselves. Already sounds similar to the other one, right? The king became weary and fell asleep, and the queen and her entourage went into the forest to admire the flowers, where they saw the rishi Shantivadan, his body unmoving, sitting in serene majesty. A mind of faith was born in the queen and her attendants. Am I supposed to stand up? No. And they made offerings of various kinds of flowers, and sitting down before the rishi, listened to the Dharma. And they're like, wow, this, by his aura, his vibration. When the king awoke, he looked about, and seeing that the queen was absent, went into the forest in search of her. Also the other attendants, meaning his harem. When he spied her and her attendants seated before the rishi, he addressed him. Have you attained the 4 stages of ecstasy? The rishi replied that he had not. The king then asked him if he had attained the 4 stations of Brahma. The rishi said that he had not. The king then asked him if he had attained the 4 dhyanas. When the rishi said that he had not attained to dhyana, the king became angry and said, since you have no attainments, you are a scoundrel. Who would trust you here in the deserted place with these women? What do you have to say for yourself living here in this place? The rishi said, here in the mountains, I meditate on patience. So, just some background. When he said, have you achieved the 4 stages of ecstasy, or have you attained the 4 stations of Brahma? Have you attained the 4 dhyanas? More or less talking about the same thing. Do you know what the 4 dhyanas are? Not Princess Diana. That's Diana. This is Dhyana, right? Dhyana, you may know this. Do you know that word? Dhyana? You may know the Pali version. Do you know the Pali version of Dhyana? Jhana. People say, oh, they've achieved the 1st jhana, the 2nd jhana. Have you ever heard that? So right now, we are inhabiting what's called the desire realm. We are dominated by desire of the appearances we have. There are more subtle realms of existence that we would call, like sometimes we talk about the human realm, the god realm, the asuras and the gods. Amongst the gods, the devas, there are different kinds. There are devas of the desire realm, like us, like the ones that in the Roman mythology and Greek mythology had looked down, came down, and interacted with people and things like that. But there are higher devas, higher gods, in what's called the form realm and the formless realm. Have you heard that before? So in the form realm and in the formless realm, there are different levels. Let's say in the form realm, there are 4 main levels. Slightly more elevated, more glorious experience. In those realms, the beings that are born there, they have a mind which doesn't have the desire, the delusions of the desire realm. They have their own delusions, their own afflictions, more subtle. They still have delusions. They're not free of afflictions, delusions, but they're more subtle. They're free of the delusions of our realm, if you're born there. We can achieve, even without being born there, through meditation, you can achieve the mind of those 4 levels that are called the 4 dhyanas. So when you meditate on, it's a lot of information. Are you getting bored? No. Is it okay?
I'd like a bulleted list.
Yeah, there you go. One of you has to make a bulleted list. Is this getting too boring for you? Okay. So, how do you achieve those 4 states? when you remember the term vipassana we talked about earlier. In order to achieve vipassana, first you need to have tranquil abiding, shamatha. What that is, that means you have a single pointed concentration. It takes a lot of effort to develop that. You have to accumulate a lot of merit to have the sort of the sustenance to achieve that. That's like a clear pool of water in analogy. Within that state of mind, you want to start to analyze. It's like putting in that clear pool of water a little koi fish or goldfish. At first, because you're not skilled, you've developed this concentrated mind without any interrupting thoughts. The mind is very calm and clear. When you start to try to analyze within it, like the Four Noble Truths or the defects of the desire realm and the advantages of the form realm, you introduce some perturbation into the calmness. So, it's as though the fish in the pool are bringing up some dust and mud from the bottom. That's kind of like some of the conceptual minds arising, and also the tranquility of the mind, like the ripples on the top. Sometimes when the fish go in the pond, you can see little ripples on the top. So you have to be able to develop within that calm state of mind the ability to navigate, to analyze within it without bringing up distracting thoughts and without losing the tranquility of the mind. That the development of that ability is, when perfected, is called vipassana, penetrative insight or higher insight. Right? When you have that ability to analyze within tranquil abiding, there are different routes you can take. You can use that vipassana in the mundane way. It's called mundane vipassana. What you do is you analyze the defects of the desire realm, short lives, inferior pleasures to the form realm. The first form realm, doesn't have the defects, all of these delusions that we have here, gross anger, no anger at all. Different kind of desire, not the gross desires that leave us, sort of without what we were talking about this morning, like heartbroken or, So when analyzes the defects of the desire realm, the advantages of the first form realm, again and again, concentrating in that way, and at a certain point, when one has developed vipassana, one is said to separate from the delusions, the afflictions of the desire realm, and you achieve the first concentration, the first dhyana. That mind, even though you have a human body, your mind is elevated in a certain way, and even when you rise from that meditation, it is separated from the gross delusions for some time, and unless if you start to get involved in the world again, you go to the market, someone argues with you, and your concentration ability loosens. You could fall from that. Once you even have the preparation for the first dhyana, that creates what's called unchangeable karma. You ever heard of unchangeable karma? Immovable karma? What does that mean? Generally, karma that we create, virtue and non-virtue and neutral, is said to be changeable. That means it might ripen in a human realm, might ripen as birth as a hell realm, might ripen as the animal realm, like you're talking about the rich dog. The karma to be rich could ripen as a human. It just depends. It's changeable. But some immovable karma means, like this kind of karma, having achieved the preparation for the first dhyana, you create the karma to be born after this lifetime in the first dhyana. Not just to have a human body with a mind elevated to that level, but actually have a subtle body in the form realm. So when he's talking about these 4 stages of ecstasy, the 4 stations of Brahma, the form realm was also called the Brahma realm, because one of the beings in the 4th realm recognizes himself as being, when the universe comes into existence, that's the first realm that's repopulated. It's like everything comes after him. He thinks he's the creator. Like in Vedic mythology, Brahma is the creator, right? Were you versed in Vedic lore when you were in India? Or you were not in India?
I was. I studied yoga in India.
Oh, you studied yoga in India, okay. So sometimes people who come from Hindu family or Vedic family, they know all of these legends. You know, Brahma is like of the various gods, Brahma is called the creator. Right? So this is all referring to, the king is asking him if he has any of these high meditative states. Actually, from the Buddhist point of view, once you develop vipassana, rather than developing those 4 dhyanas and having all sorts of psychic powers, if you instead focus on the Four Noble Truths and emptiness, that's called supramundane vipassana, not mundane vipassana. Supra means what? Not super. Supra means beyond mundane, uncontaminated. So you could use that state to develop wisdom of emptiness or to develop these 4 dhyanas. In the time of the Buddha, oftentimes the monks, especially in the Theravada tradition, they would cultivate these 4 dhyanas because they were kind of like way stations, like a vacation. Like when things got too much, you go to the first dhyana, all of the worries of the world go away, you know, your aches and pains, and you come back. You know, who was that? You said you knew Ajahn Brahm is in Australia? So Ajahn Brahm is a British monk in the Theravada tradition. I met many years ago, became friends. He actually studied physics also. Ajahn Brahm's become quite famous in Australia. He comes to Singapore a lot and has a big following, quite funny, and quite a good teacher. And he mentioned to me that his monks, they cultivate the 4 dhyanas. In the time of the Buddha, it was more easy because you kept your vows at that time. In the presence of the Buddha and the inspiration, you could achieve tranquil abiding and penetrative insight and have this. It's kind of like, remember we used the expression eye candy before? It's kind of like the monk's mind candy. You know, oh man. And also you have to be careful because so pleasant, you know, you have to be scolded by the disciplinarian. Don't spend all your time in the first dhyana. Get back here, it's a water to carry and, you know, tea to make or something like that. So the king was asking him if he had any of these qualities. The rishi said, no, I'm just as simple. The rishi said, here in the mountains, I meditate on patience. The king quickly drew his sword and said, so you meditate on patience, do you? Well, I'm going to kill you. We'll see about this patience of yours. And he cut off the rishi's 2 hands. Now, who are you? Asked the king. The rishi replied, I'm Shantivadan, the practitioner of patience. The king then cut off the rishi's 2 feet and asked, who are you now? You know, kind of expecting him to beg for mercy or something. Again, the rishi replied, I'm Shantivadan, the practitioner of patience. What did I say? The patient rishi. At that moment, the heavens and the earth trembled in 6 ways. Remember when the hand of the guy fell off when he pointed? It says sometimes karma can ripen even in the environment. Have you ever heard when someone... Have you ever taken elaborate Bodhisattva vows with a teacher? Sometimes with a very elaborate ceremony that may go on for many hours, it's mentioned that be aware now, because if someone actually develops bodhicitta now, there will be trembling of the earth in these 6 ways. It's sort of like, I wonder sometime, maybe when you hear about earthquakes, maybe there's someone in that area who generated bodhicitta. You know, so it's like so dramatic. Even the environment changes. There's a lot of bodhisattvas out there. Yeah. But also there must be a lot in Oklahoma for that reason also, where they're doing the fracking. So you can't judge that way. I'm just joking, okay. At that moment, the heavens and earth trembled in 6 ways, and the Rishi's 500 disciples came flying through the air to where he was. Seeing him, they asked, "Teacher, while undergoing these unbearable sufferings, have you not lost the thought of patience?" The Rishi answered, "My mind has not been separated from patience in the least." So he's probably on the third bhumi, the Bodhisattva at this time, who would eventually would become Shakyamuni. Thereupon the king became terrified and said to the Rishi, "Rishi, when you said that you were the Shantivadan, who would have believed it?" The Rishi said, "My words are not false." Remember, rishis, one of the qualities of a rishi is what they say is true. "If they are indeed true, may my blood become milk and my limbs which were severed become as they were formerly. If my words are not false, if they are indeed true." So what's that referring to? Do you know that? When we talk about the words of truth, we have some prayers when we bless the offerings. Do you know there's a mantra of the words of truth?
I don't know that one.
Could I see your prayer book for a second? This young, yeah, you had one. No, that's whoever. Yeah, that's Venerable Siddha. Venerable too. Her old legs. So, let's see here. Blessing the speech. Oh, there's blessing the speech. And even in the blessing the speech was this mantra. If you look on page 17, dependent related heart mantra. Om ye dharma hetu prabhava hetu tishan. If you want to know, that's the mantra. That's with Om at the beginning and Svaha at the end. That's what Asaji said to Shariputra, remember? Then, let's see here. Question, Lama. What am I looking for? Words of truth. Yeah, probably here when you're blessing the offerings. Page 25, is it? Maybe. Extensive power of truth, yeah. Konchok sumgi dempadang, sangedang jangshub sempa, tamsheki, jingi labdang, sogni yongsu sokpe, naktang chembodang, chuki ying nam padak ching, samgi mikyape topki, chuk. Oh, Rinpoche's added more lines here. Chok chu na shukpe sangedang jangshu sampadam jedang, pakpa jamponan kunsu sampo la sokpe. He didn't add this, also in some versions. Nampa chope tingi pumbo samgi mi kape shemi shepa namki kangwa gyur. So, koncho sumgi dempadang, by the power. Well, it says, Konchok Sumgi Dempadang, the truth of the 3 jewels. Konchok Sum means the 3 jewels, the Triratnam. Like, they are something that actually exist. They're not imagination. Sangedang Jangshub Sampa Tamcheki Jingi Lapdang, the blessings, by the truth of the blessings of the Buddhas and all the Bodhisattvas. And by the truth. The word truth only comes at the very end. By the truth of the great wealth of the 2 completed collections, Sogni Yongsu. So the 2 collections, what are the 2 collections? Red Cross and the collection of merit and the collection of wisdom, right? So all of these things are true. By the truth of these, may these offerings that I have imagined here be experienced by the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So there are many examples of great beings in the past who simply invoking the power of truth, by the fact that I myself have practiced only for the benefit of others, may my limbs be restored, or something like that. Comes in some of the sutras. So here he's calling on, the Bodhisattva is calling on the power of truth. Simply by that. It's not just like saying, by the power of truth of me being a member of Kadampa Center, may I have $1 million. That's not going to work. but by the power of something which is veritably true. When you have deep realization, sometimes what you are wishing for can actually be accomplished right then and there. So the rishi said, my words are not false. If they are indeed true, so he's calling on the power of truth, may my blood become milk and my limbs which were severed become as they were formerly. When the rishi had thus spoken, his blood became milk and his limbs appeared as before. It was the same situation here, right? Seeing this, the king was even more frightened and said, great rishi, I have harmed you because of ignorance and sin. I confess these sins to you. Do you have compassion on me? The rishi said, it was because of the women that you cut off my limbs with a sword. This did not harm me because my patience is like the earth. When I shall have attained enlightenment of a Buddha, I shall cut away your 3 poisons with the sword of wisdom. When the gods and nagas of that mountain saw the king had harmed the rishi, they were enraged and stirred up the clouds and brought them together. The nagas roared and sent down thunderbolts from the sky, and the king and those with him, about to be killed, became terrified and cried, great rishi, have compassion, save us. When the rishi commanded the gods and nagas not to harm the living beings for his sake, they became calm and disappeared. Like the deer also, not wanting retaliation. When we do the Guru Puja, is it Thursday night? There's one verse when talking about the perfection of patience on the glance meditation on the Lan Rim. Kamsum Kegyum Magyar Drugurte Sheshing Sangjuk Dikchik Sukcho Kyang Mituk Nolen Pempa Drupjepe Sope Barchin Sopa Jengilov. Please grant me blessings to perfect the practice of patience. Like here. Even if all of the beings in the 3 realms were to get angry at me, who abuse me, enumerate my faults, you're this, threaten me, or even kill me. In response to their harm, may I benefit them. May I respond to their harm, may I return their harm with benefit. Usually when someone harms us, we return harm. You hit me, I hit you. Jesus, what did Jesus say? If someone were to smote you on one, what memory I have of Christian from when I was a little boy. If someone were to smote you on one cheek, you should offer the other cheek. He didn't go as far to say you should benefit them, you should just be even more patient. So here, even in the Buddhist perception, even more so. The king, having confessed his sins, invited the rishi to his palace and honored him with various kinds of offerings. When 1,000 mendicants who followed other teachers saw the king and his entourage honoring the rishi, Shantivadan, and believing in him, they became envious and threw filth on the rishi. Right? I don't know. I wasn't there. I believe. The mendicants who at that time threw filth on me are now Nadi Kashyapya and the 1,000 monks. Some of his first disciples. They were the ones that threw filth on me then. Where is it? My meditation on patience at that time was a vow that when I should have attained supreme enlightenment, I would cleanse their impurities with the waters of Amrita and would totally purify their attachments. O monks, do not think that at that time, under those circumstances, the Rishi Skantivadan was anyone else but me. That was me. Kaundinya, the first of the 5 disciples that attained arhatship, Kandina and the 4, so the 5 first disciples, were King Kalinda and his 4 ministers at that time. When at that time I meditated on patience, I vowed that when I attained supreme enlightenment, I would first liberate them from suffering, and now that I have attained Buddhahood, I have indeed liberated them first. The monks had faith in the Buddha's word and greatly rejoiced. So there are other renditions of this either there's the Buddha on many occasions appeared in the world as a rishi meditating on patience, slightly different stories, or they're referring to the same situation that the Buddha mentioned in different contexts, emphasizing certain facets. These two stories were quite similar. In other stories that you find, like say, for instance, in the Madhyamaka teachings, when it talks about the different bhumis, the different perfections, the patience, it does mention also when the Buddha was Shantivadan, and it gives more details about first the king cut off his ears, one ear, then the other ear, then his nose, then his tongue. So he didn't go here, he immediately went to his hands, right? Maybe this is abbreviated, maybe it's another time, you're not sure. Then he cut off his hands, his feet, his legs, and never lost that concentration on patience. So that kind of indicates that the Bodhisattva was on the third bhumi. You kind of get that impression. It could have been other places, but especially on that. On the first bhumi, remember, what does that mean? The person is already a bodhisattva on the 5 paths. They pass the path of accumulation, the path of preparation. They're now on the path of seeing. They see emptiness directly, and they have a special surpassing practice of the perfection of generosity. So one of the stories we will talk about after the break, when the Buddha, there are many of these Jatakas telling about how the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, was able to give away, so many things. It's sort of remarkable. So why don't we, is it a good time to take a break? Too soon? No good? Okay. It's almost 12 minutes. Okay, so 3:15? 3:15, okay, step back. Thank you. Try that. Sorry. There we go. Sorry. So, yeah, I've forgotten your name, this lady's name. Naga had mentioned, boy, she didn't say it like this, but almost like the undertone was, man, you're throwing a lot of stuff at us. So I'm sorry. Excuse me, but sometimes it's worth, some of you have heard this before and you may not make the connection, and sometimes hearing it again. If you haven't heard it before, and it's just not deep enough to make connections, think of it as leaving an imprint in your mind. Sort of like when you paint fresh wood, bare wood, you have to put on a primer, and after a couple hours it sort of fades. But without that primer, the next coat, which may be the final coat, wouldn't be as vibrant. That would also fade. So think of this as kind of your primer coat of some of these concepts if you have not heard before, if I have not given enough detail for you to see, some reality of that. Okay? Is that okay? Okay. So I want to read another one to you here. Now again, is this the one? Yeah. From the leaves of the tree, of the heaven tree. So that's not the name of the Sanskrit or the Buddhist or the Tibetan text. Not that you will remember this, but just if it's on the soundtrack, maybe someone can look it up. It's based on Shemendra's Bodhisattva Avadana Kalpalata. So Avadana is talking about, is another word there in the Hindu tradition also. Avadanas are life stories. So this has 108 of these Buddhist stories. So this is the story called the Generosity of King Sri Sena, the second of these 108 in this volume. And that would be in this tanka. I think it would be represented for this area. If you have each of the tankas represents 2 or 3 or 4 of these. So long ago, the city named Arista had wealth and glory that rivaled the splendor of the gods. When it says long ago or time long ago, it might be in other universes. This is not, from a Buddhist perspective, not just this earth, even other universes before. When we talk in Western cosmology, we talk about the Big Bang and the evolution of the earth, and then maybe eventually there'll be a time when it collapses again or disappears. From a Buddhist perspective, world systems come and go. We are in a period of abidance right now, stability, but eventually this world system will disappear. And in other world systems, many, many eons ago, completely different universe, you might say, these different things happened. Our mind streams are not limited to this area of space or to this world system. It depends on our karma. Once when Moggallana's mother died, remember the 2 disciples, Shariputra and Moggallana, of the Buddha. Shariputra was foremost in what? Do you remember? Wisdom. Moggallana was foremost in what? What? No. You're clever, wisdom and method. No. What?
Morality?
No. Magic, psychic powers. Psychic powers. So Moggallana, he tried to see where his mother was born with his divine eye. Divine eye doesn't mean this eye. It means like the capacity of wisdom to see distant places. Couldn't see where mom was born. He has to be born somewhere in samsara, but he couldn't see everything because he was not yet omniscient. He was an arhat. So he asked the Buddha, and the Buddha said, yes, your mother was born in the universe in the northern direction called something, something. is one of the examples in the Abhidharma. Joey or someone was talking about, we were talking about Abhidharma earlier. In the Abhidharma, it mentions that the Buddha is superior to the Arhats because he's unimpeded in seeing distant places, knowing distant times, and different things like this. Whereas in the Mahayana, generally we say the Buddha's omniscience far surpasses those mere qualities. But at any rate, when it says here, long ago, this is maybe just brief, who knows how long, it's not saying how many kalpas. Sometimes the Buddha gave, 230,000 kalpas in the past, just long ago, might be longer than that. In a city named Arista that had wealth and glory that rivaled the splendor of the gods. The city was ruled by King Srisena, who was ornamented with all virtues. He delighted in benefiting beings by giving from his coffers. Coffers, his friend's treasury. He was also wise, upright, honest, and a great leader in all ways. Endowed with such kingly qualities, he did not know even the words for sin or unhappiness. And his land was truly equal to the eternal city of the gods. He did not even know the words for sin or unhappiness. That'd be nice, huh? Looking down upon King Srisena, Shakra, king of the gods. Who is Shakra, by the way? What's another name for Shakra? Have you heard of Shakra? There's another name you might know. Indra. So when Buddha first attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, you know the story, right? After he arose, he thought to himself, the Dharma that I've realized is so profound but so subtle that the people in the world whose eyes are, clouded by the dust of ignorance couldn't perceive. So I won't talk about it. I'm not going to give any teachings. For 7 weeks, I think he was there. Finally, he was requested by Indra and Brahma. So I mentioned who Brahma was. In the form realm, the king of the fourth concentration, the fourth dhyana or fourth jhana, in the actual physical Brahma realm is called Brahma, the creator. He's called that because at the beginning of a universe, when a universe comes into existence, the Brahma realm is the first one. When the physical universe is there and then sentient beings begin to populate the various realms, the Brahma realm is the first one populated. The first one populated there, like, I'm here, then everything else comes as he thinks I'm the creator. Some people have said that may be the origin of the Christian, or what do you say, the Judaic, the peoples of the book tradition of the creator God. Maybe they think maybe their God is Brahma. Who knows? So, endowed with such kingly qualities, he did not know even the words for sin or unhappiness. His land was truly equal to the eternal city of the gods. Looking upon King Srisena, Shakra, it's Indra, king of the gods. So what's the difference between Indra and Brahma? Brahma's the king of the fourth, the resident of the fourth Brahma realm, the fourth dhyana. Indra is the highest of the various level of the devas of the desire realm. The king and the top level of the desire realm is Indra. He has an elephant. He's very powerful. So those two gods are the ones that came down and requested Buddha. There are some people whose eyes, wisdom eyes, are not, veiled by so much ignorance. You can, there's great value. Please turn the wheel of Dharma. So here's Shakra, king of the gods, thought, the moral virtue of this king seems equal to my own. He's a pretty virtuous guy. His generosity is renowned throughout the world. To see whether or not he actually has such strength of character, I think I will go and beg the king for his body. When I go to the land of men, I will take along a small entourage of gods to witness. In the meanwhile, the minister entrusted with guarding the kingdom, a wise man named Rajyarakashguru, long one, excuse my pronunciation. Sometimes Rachel Maddow says, I've murdered that name. When she's someone from Poland or these Russian oligarchs. If I had time to read it carefully, I wouldn't do such a bad job. He had such an ominous dream that he had once told the king, "Alas, your majesty, the fame of your generosity has become very great. The god Shakra is jealous and coming here to ask for your majesty's body. The king in his generosity would give away everything he has. For a renunciate, this is the correct way to act." Remember, we were talking at lunch about even giving your family away, which is kind of beyond the scope of some of us. But a king is a guardian jewel to his people, and he should not even think of giving away his life or those of his wife and children. This is like, I think Susie wrote this. Do not take joy in what would be our deprivation. Yeah, he should not even think of giving away his life or those of his wife and children. Right? The king showed his beautiful white teeth in a smile and replied, "My minister, you are wise. You would help me, I know. But who could turn their back on anyone pleading to be given what they are mentally dying for? Even for me to hear your words suggesting that I stop giving what people desire is to hear you ask me to live, but to live as lifeless as a corpse. I live to give." Essentially, right? Of the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva, the first that they develop a special practice of is generosity, giving. Even like Shariputra had not yet reached the point where he could give his body, and because he didn't do it at the right time, he lost his bodhicitta. But once that bodhicitta is stable, one can even give one's own body for others. Beggars come here hoping to obtain one thing or another. If I were to leave them hopeless, how could I live? If there's someone I can help, I'm happy even if my body comes to harm. When the king said all this with great firmness, the minister realized he would not listen to reason, to the minister's reason, to Susie's reason, and grew greatly disheartened. Now a wise and learned Brahmin lived close by in a forest. One day he happened to see the king's wife, Queen Jayaprabha, who was very beautiful and virtuous. Because of various propensities carried over from previous lives, imprints, karmic imprints from previous lives, the Brahmin, although he lived free from attachments, desired her with all his heart. This same Brahmin had a disciple to whom he had taught all he knew. The disciple asked his master, "What can I offer you in return for what you have taught me?" The Brahmin who has attachment for the king's wife had a disciple. The disciple asks him, "What can I give you to pay you back for all that you've taught me?" The Brahmin replied, "I live in the forest, so I do not need any kind of wealth. But King Srisena has a wife named Jayaprabha. Should you bring her to me, that would be payment enough." So he kind of lost his way a bit. The disciple thought, "If I do not do this, my teacher will be displeased. If I take her, the king will punish me." Dilemma, right? Like the other dilemmas, should I do right? Should I do the worldly thing or should I do the virtuous thing? What is to be done? But he went to the palace, and the king, seeing a beggar, was delighted. So the disciple has gone to the palace. The king thinks he's a beggar. "What do you wish?" the king asked. "I cannot say," cried the Brahmin youth as he fell with his face to the ground. So what can't he say? What does he want? He wants the king's wife, right, to give to his Brahmin teacher. "I will give you whatever you wish," the king said. "Tell me." And so the youth explained his dilemma to the king. Now the king loved his wife to distraction. and could not bear to part with her. But he considered further. If he did not give up his wife, he would not be fulfilling the Brahman's desires. What could he do? And so, standing firmly on his vow of generosity, he called in his queen, and after explaining his problem to her, gave her to the Brahmin. This is the Brahmin youth who's going to give it to his teacher. King Jayaprabha was wild with terror. Her eyes flickered anxiously at the Brahmin, like the eyes of a wild animal trapped in a lair. Although the king and queen truly loved one another, they were unattached to all desires. But most others are different. Because of women, many a man will give up his morality. And because of men, many a woman will give up their morality. Caught up in desire, many will give up their wealth. Others abstemious practices. What does that have to do with abstention? Like their restraint. Others give up their religion. Others give up all shame. Still others will give up their bodies. But this king, having said he would part with this wondrous queen, gave her up without regret, like a dewdrop gathered from the grass. When the ladies of the city saw the Brahmin youth leading the queen away, they were so distraught they became frozen with fear. The youth led Queen Jayaprabha to his master, who upon seeing her was overcome with regret and shame. Alas, or in New York they'd say, oy vey. Lady, you are like a mother to all beings. It is not right for me to bring such hardship upon you. By the power of desire, I have lost all shame and moral standing. This action has ruined my reputation and thrown me into an abyss. I sincerely regret what I have done. Now do not despair. I will at once take you back to the king. The queen, feeling as if she had been brought back from the dead, rejoiced. In the meantime, Shakra had manifested as a Brahmin whose lower body was spilling forth blood and guts. The terrible apparition was being carried into the city on a litter borne by 4 men and chased by hordes of carnivorous birds and beasts, attracted by the smell of putrefying flesh. The people of the city who saw this shuddered and were left mute in horror. So this is not really happening. This is just Shakra appearing this way, right? He's going to test the king. The cripple was carried to the king, who could not bear to look upon this frightful creature, unable even to die. The king immediately asked him what it was he wished. The Brahmin haltingly whispered, like one barely able to speak, "In the forest, my stomach was ripped out and eaten by tigers. When I wondered what could be done to help me, a god in the sky told me that if there were someone who had no use for his body and would give it to another, it could be joined to mine and my life would be saved. It seemed impossible that there could be anyone who could give up his own happiness to help another. Who would do such a thing?" The god replied that there was only one such person in the world. You, O king, having been born from previous merit. You are the last resort for the destitute and frightened. By beating the drum of your merit with the drumstick of giving, you are able to give life and body. The sweet sound of the drum rings out like the southern winds that carry the sweet smell of sandalwood everywhere. I go to you for refuge. From the clear full moon of your face, your words shine like rays of light and fall like nectar. I pray that you will relieve me of the searing pain of my terrible afflictions. So this is all subterfuge, right? The king could not bear the Brahman's suffering and at once replied, "May I relieve your suffering? Without hesitation, I will give half my body. The wise minister shook in body and mind. "Your Majesty," he cried, "do not talk so rashly. Do not talk nonsense. As a king, you help all beings. To break the wish-granting gem, your body, into fragments would be to forsake your compassion for all other beings." A common refrain in these acts of giving. The Brahmin is a demon in disguise. Do not let him transform the heart of the king. And then all the people of the land pleaded with the king, but he would not listen. The king then spoke the following to the minister and the people. "I remember now my previous life in which I produced the mind of enlightenment." The bodhicitta, right? So he's a bodhisattva. Long ago I sacrificed my body to others, and so now I am never ill. I remember giving my body without regret to prevent a tigress from eating her cubs. I also remember giving both my eyes to a blind man at the time I was born as a Shibi, one of these previous civilizations. At another time, I protected a pigeon from a hawk by giving up my own body. I remember being King Chandraprabha and giving up my head to the fierce-eyed one. In other lives, I gave everything that I possessed. I gave even my wives and children. This time as well, nothing must hinder me from giving up my life and body. All those around the king felt their vision flicker as if they were dying. To perform the deed, the king selected a craftsman who sliced away at the king's body with a sharp saw. Finally, as the king's body was cut in half, earth shook, meteors shot across the sky, and the stars cried out and shed tears. The sun dimmed and as if obscured by dust, all the people wept and fainted. The king, however, smiled in delight. Although his body was cut in two, the lower part of the king's body was attached to the Brahmin, who was then made whole. The Brahmin stood up. Remember, the Brahmin said the bottom part of his body had been ravaged by tigers or something. The Brahmin stood up and joyfully praised the king. Shakra, astonished that the king did not regret his sacrifice. So who is Shakra in this story? He's manifesting as this person whose body wanted to be restored. He was astonished that the king did not regret his sacrifice, restored the king's body to its former state with magical elixir of the gods. From the sky, white flowers rained down. The earth itself moved to and fro as if swept up in festivities. All marveled, and as they were rejoicing, the other Brahmin returned to the palace with the queen. The Brahmin gave her back to the king along with great praise, and all celebrated the outcome of the king's action. The king and his queen, full of love and compassion, continued to rule with the strength of virtue, filling all beings with happiness. The fame of the royal couple spread throughout their realm and beyond into the lands of gods and men. So this is, again, talking about generosity, perfection of giving, being able to give up even one's own body. When we talk in the the verse I think I was reciting to you before from Lama Chopa that we'll do on Thursday. I keep on mentioning that, so you might think, oh, I wasn't going to come to Lama Chopa, but now maybe I want to see those verses. So that's clever, huh? Just teasing. Please grant me blessings to perfect the practice of generosity by enhancing the mind of giving without attachment, my body, my wealth, even the possessions of my virtues of the three times, giving up even the karmic consequences of my actions, to transform how I can enhance the mind of giving by imagining transforming these like a wish-fulfilling gem into whatever people want, whatever their object of desire is. That's why he's talking about to fulfill the objects of desire. Now, in a similar vein, but bringing up some other points, I want to read you another, if I have read one from, I think I've read one from here, one called Prince Svasti. It's number 7. In this compendium. I think I saw it in one of the others as another version. Prince Svasti. What does Svasti mean? Or swasti? You know the symbol, is that on here? Swastika? Yeah. So actually in Sanskrit it's SV, but even in the Hitler, they called it swastika. They replaced the V by a W, right? What is it like? Sometimes people, some Indians, even nowadays, they don't always pronounce like Sanskrit. They'll say, what will they say? Vajra instead of Vajra or something like that. So swasti actually means auspicious. You know, at the end of text, sometimes there's just a word, Om Swasti, may it be auspicious, something like that. So, Prince Swasti. Thus I have heard at one time, upon a certain occasion, when the Enlightened One was residing in the bamboo grove of the Kalandaka bird, he put on his upper robe and lower robes, taking his alms bowl, went with Ananda to seek alms. I alluded to this the other day when I said many sutras begin this. The Buddha goes out for alms, comes back, eats, washes his feet, sits down and meditates, right? At that time in the city there lived under a gatehouse belonging to a certain householder, a blind old couple who had no dwelling place, no property, and no food. They lived under the gatehouse. So they're like, what do you call it? Homeless, like in New York City, like living under Trump Tower or something. The couple had a 7-year-old son who begged food, took it to the old man and woman, his mom and dad, and thus fed them. The best of the food he gave to his parents, the scraps he ate himself. When Ananda saw how this boy honored and cared for his parents, he was pleased and praised him. When the Buddha had returned from his alms round and had eaten, he taught the Dharma to the assembly. Then Ananda, kneeling and folding his palms in reverence, said to the Buddha, Lord, during the alms round, we saw a little boy who honored and cared for his parents by begging. When he received food or fruit or whatever that was given to him, he gave the best to them and ate the scraps himself. Nor does he do this for one day only, but all the time. And it would seem that this makes the boy happy. The Buddha said, Ananda, whenever anyone, whether a monk or nun or married person or whoever it may be, honors his or her parents and makes sacrifices for them, it is exceedingly difficult to calculate the merits that he gains. You may remember I mentioned, we talk about the recipient of our generosity. Our parents are some of the heaviest objects because they've given us this body, this perfect human rebirth. They've taught us, they've guarded us, and so forth. So the karma that we create in caring for them, sacrificing for them will enhance our ability to practice a spiritual path. It's difficult to calculate the merits that someone like this gains in honoring their parents, making sacrifices for them. Why is this? I recall that in eons long past, in a former birth, I honored my parents with loving thoughts and even sacrificed my own flesh for them. Because of this, I was liberated from the obstacles, and by the power of that root of virtue, I passed beyond the universal monarch's birth and an Indra's birth and became the supreme of the three worlds and attained Buddhahood. What does that mean? Oftentimes when the Bodhisattva was doing these incredible acts of generosity or patience or keeping morality, strict morality, perseverance, people would ask him, why are you doing this? You want to become a universal king? You're collecting all this merit to become, because some people will do that. That's their ambition. Or to become Indra, king of the higher realm gods. Why are you doing this? And the Bodhisattva would say, no, leave that aside. I'm doing this to achieve the state of Buddhahood, to be able to help all sentient beings. That's the aim. So I passed beyond a universal monarch's birth, passed beyond Indra's birth, and became the supreme of the three worlds and attained Buddhahood. Ananda said, Lord, I beseech you to tell us how in time long past, in order to honor your parents, you sacrificed your own life and gave your own flesh and delivered them from the bonds of death. Excuse me. The Buddha said, Ananda, listen well and bear it in mind. Bear it in mind. Keep it in. Don't forget it. And I shall tell you. That's very important. Every sentence here gives us something to think about and practice. Ananda said, Lord, so be it. I'll do that. The Buddha said, Ananda, in eons long past, eons past recall beyond conception, there was an emperor in this Jambudvipa. You know Jambudvipa? What does that mean? We say, and we make the mandala, Zambuling. The Tibetans don't say Jambu, they say Zambu. Ling is Dvipa. Ling means island. Dvipa means island or landmass. Jambu means this continent, southern continent, is called Jambu Dvipa. Jambu is the name of a rose apple that supposedly is something indicative of this southern continent. So this, you could say this world system we live in, or just the southern continent, whatever. So long ago, in this Jambu Dvipa, there was an emperor by the name of Deva who lived in the country called Sribhadra. This emperor had 1,000 sons whom he established as kings in the 10 directions. The youngest son was named Virtuous, and he was made king of the land of the large-bodied people. He was devoted and honored and made offerings to the gods. Here it says he was devout. Oh, he was devout and honored and made offerings to the gods. What's the land of the big, large-bodied people? When we talk about the 4 continents, you know, what is it called? Shar, Lupakpo, Lo, Zambuling. Lupakpo, this eastern continent, Lupakpo, Lu means body, Pakpo means, you know, exalted. I think since those beings have large bodies in that direction. So it doesn't say the eastern direction, but I think that's. The emperor had a great minister called Rahula, who, because of his poisonous mind, murdered the emperor and usurped the throne and sent his soldiers in all directions to spy and to assassinate the kings. Remember the king who he had just assassinated, he had enshrined his sons as kings of the various places. One day when King Virtuous, one of the sons, had gone to the park to rest, a yaksha appeared to him from an opening in the ground, kneeling, and spoke, King, the minister Rahula, because of his poisonous mind, has murdered your father, the emperor, and your elder brothers. Now the soldiers are approaching to murder you too. You must find some means of escape. The king was exceedingly worried and began to make plans to escape that very night. Now this king had a son called Svasti, whom, because he was handsome and comely, whom he was going to take with him because he was handsome and comely. If he wasn't handsome, he wouldn't have taken. Seeing them make haste, the queen said, My lord, what is the cause of your odd behavior and your hasty departure? The king replied, This is not for you to know. He wasn't going to take his wife. He was going to take this handsome son, comely. What does that mean, comely? Doesn't that mean... Oh, yeah, that's right. So handsome, sort of the same thing, maybe slightly. Okay. So it's not comely, it's comely?
Comely.
Oh, okay. I always said it's comely. Good. I learned something. Your odd behavior, hasty departure. The king replied, This is not for you to know. The queen said, My lord, for the sake of my peace of mind, whatever works are afoot, do not, I beg you, conceal them from me. The king replied, While I was in the park, a yaksha appeared to me and told me that the minister Rahula had killed my father and my elder brothers, and that his soldiers are now coming to kill me, and that I must find some means of escape. The queen knelt and said, Lord, I shall accompany you. I shall accompany you. Do not abandon me. The king took provisions for a week, loaded them on his back. Could we do that today? Maybe with what do we call it, condensed milk and stuff. You easily get. The queen, on his back, took the queen and his son and set out. They traveled for 12 days, but in their great haste, they lost their way, and the provisions ran out. Okay? Thereupon the king thought, there's no other way. What do you think? I have to kill the queen and eat her flesh. If you're woke, don't tell this to anyone else. He's going to choose the wife first rather than the son. Sending the queen on ahead, he put the boy on his back, followed her, drew his sword, and as he was about to stab her, the son pressed his palms together and pleaded, "Father, I beseech you, do not kill the queen, my mother." Repeating this again and again, he sought to save his mother's life. Then he said, "Father, without killing me, cut off my flesh bit by bit and feed the three of us. If you kill me, the flesh will become wormy and spoil. So just cut it off piece by piece." It's a little bit like, in the boats in the past, they sometimes would bring a big turtle or tortoise, and they'd just cut off a little of the flesh to put in the soup. It would stay alive. Otherwise, if you killed the animal, the meat would spoil very soon. The king then cut off bits of the boy's flesh and nourished them each day, the three of them, and when the flesh had been eaten, sucked the marrow from the bones. As they were about to abandon the boy, he said, "Father and mother, my body has become weakened. Give me a little of the flesh, then go on." His own flesh. "I beg you." The father and mother divided the flesh into 3 parts. Each took 1 part and gave 1 part to the boy and went on. The son then made the following wish prayer. "By the merit of having offered the flesh of my own body to my father and mother, may I attain enlightenment and deliver all beings in the 10 directions from their many sufferings and lead them to nirvana." Immediately, all the realms of the 3 great kiliocosms trembled in 6 ways. Oh, kiliocosms. You know what that means? That's a little bit of a neologism. Edward Kanza, famous translator, translated a particular term, and I can't remember off the top of my head the Sanskrit, but in Tibetan we say Tong Sum, the great Tong Sum Chambo or Tong Sum, the 3,000 worlds. So it doesn't mean 3,000. In modern mathematical notation, you say 10 cubed. So, or 1,000 cubed, sorry. What is 1,000 cubed? What is 1,000 squared? 1,000 is a million. 1,000 cubed is another 1,000 billion. So sometimes it says the billion world systems. Sometimes, as Kanza sort of tried to make it into sort of like Greek trikiliocosm, the great 3,000. Here, this translator, Stanley Fry, just said kiliocosm, like 1,000 world system. So the 3,000 means not 3,000 world systems. It means 1,000 world systems is your base. Take 1,000 of those. If you can imagine, when you're making a mandala offering, you can do this. You're offering 1,000, like in the Lama Chopa, it says Chawatake Nishi Lungpoche. It says 10 million. Chawatake Nishi Lungpoche. Chawatake. Actually, Chawa means 10 million. Take means enough to make it a billion. so essentially, you're offering 1 billion world systems when you offer the mandala. Where were they? Immediately, all the realms of the 3 great kiliocosms trembled in 6 ways. All the gods from their palaces in the realms of desire to the realm of form, so Indra and Brahma realms, ask what all the gods in their palaces in the realm of desire and the realm of form ask what such a sign portended. All this moving around. Looking with their divine eye, they saw that the earth and firmament trembled because on earth the Bodhisattva had cut his flesh from his own body and sacrificed it to his parents, and offered this sacrifice to attain perfect Buddhahood and to deliver all beings. Then the gods descended from the firmament and let fall a shower of tears. Thereupon Indra, the lord of the gods, of the desire realm, in order to test the boy, transformed himself into a beggar, took the boy's hand, and begged for its flesh. The boy is almost bones. The father had been sucking the marrow out of his bones. He's only got a hand. So Indra is asking him to give the hand to him. Then, transforming himself into a tiger and a lion, Indra came to devour the boy. The boy thought, since these beasts of prey desire to eat me, I shall give them what flesh and bones and marrow that are still left in my body. With this thought, he became joyful, and every thought of regret left him. When Indra saw that the boy's mind was irreversible and firm, he changed himself back into his own form and spoke to him. Son, do you desire to attain the birth of Indra, the lord of the gods, that you have so devotedly sacrificed your own flesh for your parents? If not, do you wish to become a Mara king or a Brahma king? Remember I said sometimes they'll say, what are you doing all these meritorious deeds for? You want these great worldly boons? The boy replied, Indra, I have no desire for the pleasures of the three worlds. I wish to attain Buddhahood and to deliver countless beings. Liberate countless beings. Indra said, surely you regret having sacrificed the flesh from your own body for the sake of your parents. The boy replied, I feel no regret, not even so much as the tip of a hair. Indra said, seeing your body without flesh, who could believe that you experienced no regrets? The boy replied, if, in truth, I have no regrets, and if I am able to attain perfect Buddhahood, may my body become as it was before, invoking the words of truth. Whereupon he said this, when he said this, his body became as it was formerly. Thereupon Indra and the other gods allowed him, and all exclaimed in one voice, excellent, excellent. I remember once when Lama Yeshe was alive, we were talking about what would you do if you encountered a lion in the desert and is coming toward you, or in the forest, a lion or tiger, and someone said, I would take refuge. Because we had been taught refuge. That's what you do, right? Take refuge in Buddha Dhamma. And I remember Lama said, would you give your body to that? Because there are many, this is one of the examples. Maybe Lama was thinking of this, or the time that the Buddha, the Bodhisattva gave his body to the tigress who couldn't give milk to her babies, couldn't feed them, and she was dying, and she was about to eat them, kill them, and that he gave his own body to give her sustenance, to protect them. Right now, that seems like something that we couldn't do. Like Shantideva says in the beginning of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, in the beginning, the Lord, the Bhagavan, the Buddha, taught us to give vegetables and so forth. You know that verse? Something like that. Later, so that later we will be able to give our own flesh. So right now we're not like Shariputra. It's not the time to give our own body. It's the wrong time. It's the wrong time to give up your own. Like out of enthusiasm, you hear some lectures. I'm giving away my Prius. My what's it called? You've got the extra word on it. Prime. I'm going to give my Prius Prime. I'm going to give away Matt, my son, and my daughter. No, but not their kids. They're too cute. It's not the right time right now for us. Perhaps giving physical possessions, not so long before we could give away. But to give our body, it's not the right time yet. But by giving other possessions and other things now and imagining that we might be able to do this in the future. So thereupon Indra and the other gods lauded him and all exclaimed in one voice, excellent, excellent, because by the words of truth he had caused his body to be reconstituted. Then the boy's father and mother and all of the people of that land came to where the boy was and were astonished. The king of that country, seeing this amazing feat of the boy prince, rejoiced greatly and believed, and taking the boy and his parents to his palace, showered them with countless honors. Actually, the father was the one who wanted to kill the mother, was eating this. In compassion, he sent an army together with the king and the prince to their own country. Remember Rahula, the bad minister? They deposed the minister Rahula and made the king emperor. When he had ascended the throne, agriculture flourished and the land enjoyed peace. The Buddha then said to Ananda, Ananda, he who is now my father, Suddhodana. So remember, Siddhartha was born to King Suddhodana. In Kapilavastu, his mother Mahadevi, under the Sala tree in Lumbini, gave birth to him. So his father. He who is now my father, Suddhodana, was the emperor. That was the one who was going to kill the mother, right? She who is now my mother, Mahamaya, what did I say, Mahadevi? Mahamaya was the queen, and I was the prince. Ananda, through the virtue of compassionately sacrificing my own flesh for my father and mother and saving them from disaster in times long past, whenever I was reborn among the gods or among men, I was born in the supreme excellent lineage, whatever the highest lineage or status was, and became endowed with countless virtues. By the power of those virtues, I have attained perfect enlightenment. Those who had listened to the Lord tell one of his former birth stories of how he sacrificed himself for his father and mother were astonished. Some became stream winners, others became never returners, and all had faith and rejoiced greatly. Prince Svasti. I remember reading that, and I remember as a child, my mom and dad died many years ago. My mom died when I think 2 years after I graduated from college. And my dad died when after the first year I was a monk or a bhikshu. So I didn't have a chance, and as a child I didn't have the mindset that many people do of honoring my parents. It's just like, they didn't, like the mindset of people when we talk about the kindness of the mother, people say, oh, but my mother wasn't kind. It's kind of like that mindset I had. And reading this and then seeing some of my colleagues, my Dharma friends, taking care of their parents, giving up, even like one of my friends, Jeremy, giving up his education at the dialectic school to come back and take care of his dad who was now in the hospice with emphysema, the one who wrote Fairman. There's a book that we were reading. The incredible kindness and sacrifice they did. Other people sacrificing, giving up other things, even their own practice and their own, to take care of their parents. I developed some kind of change of mind, great regret for the neglect I'd taken with respect to my own parents. And I rejoice again and again when I think of this, not only when I think of this story, how wonderful it would be to be like that, even to be like the other people who in the worldly view are just ordinary good people taking care of their parents. I rejoice in that. So we can see in all of these stories some opportunity to practice in some way. Even when we can't give up our own body now, we can rejoice in that. We can rejoice in others sacrificing their own lives to take care of their parents, or we ourselves, as I know many of you take care of your parents, and under sometimes great hardship. So that's next to offering to the gurus and the Sangha and the Buddhas, heaviest object of karma are your own parents. So if you can practice that and rejoice in that, that's very, 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 very positive. This is our end time, right? 4 o'clock? 4:30. Or 4:30. We still have a little time. So before I start another story, any things have come up? Any questions, doubts, contradictions of what I said?
I have
first?
Yeah, you go first. I thought you were going to sacrifice that first.
No, but
No.
not my father.
He's sacrificing for you.
I have questions from the last two stories before this one.
Sure.
The story before this one was generosity of King Sritsena.
Right.
And
you know what that means? Shri means glorious, like
Oh.
like we say Palden Lamo, Shri Devi. Shri means glorious. And Sena, I think, means army. So just like a name, glorious army. Okay, Shri Sena.
One of the lines in the story was, in the previous life, I attained the mind of enlightenment. It was just something he said to
Right.
justify, I think, what he was going to do
Yeah.
to other people who were asking. Does that mean he realized emptiness now? Or in a previous life he had and then lost it? Or
No, neither. None of the above.
none of the above? Okay.
I remember one of my friends, childhood friend Dennis, he told me that he received some kind of recruiting postcard from the Marines. It says, there are two choices. Yes, I want to serve my country as a patriot, and something like this, and then the second one, no, I don't care about the... And then he added another box, none of the above. So the mind of enlightenment is bodhicitta. That's what it's another way of translating it. Chitta means mind, bodhi means enlightenment. Bodhicitta. So in a previous life, I had developed spontaneous bodhicitta. I became a bodhisattva. I entered the Mahayana path. Because of that, now I am continuing, these bodhisattva practices. That's kind of the import of that, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And the other question is when you were talking about the 4 dhyanas.
Right. Not Diana's, right?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not a girl group
Yeah,
or
right.
anything.
New group, boy group, girl group.
It was mundane and super mundane.
Yeah. What's the difference between that?
Yeah,
go on.
my question was, would someone who had the mundane abilities lose them at death or over time, but someone who had the supramundane abilities, supramundane vipassana, use it to develop emptiness? Is that the type of thing you might hold on to?
So the monks at the time when the Buddha was alive, Shakyamuni Buddha, many of them developed this, what I jokingly said, mind candy. Because in those realms, mind is very peaceful. And it's not the overt joy that we experience. It's more and more like a neutral state of mind, but just like all distractions gone. So it's like the refuge. Even they may not achieve in that lifetime nirvana, they have this repose. They can enter into that. That ability to have that state of mind may not continue into the next life if they pass away without having any other attainments. Or it might be there's a strong imprint of that they can easily achieve at the next lifetime, concentration, like some people. It depends on what they did with that, because once you achieve those concentrated states, those absorptions or dhyanas, Tibetan we say samten. There's a very common Tibetan name, samten, Geshe samten or something like that. That means dhyana. So once you achieve that, it's kind of like the hot water with which you can use it different ways. You can make miso soup, you can make ramen noodles, you can make instant coffee, tea, you can take a bath. So hot water. So with that you can develop clairvoyance, you can develop divine eye, divine ear, and so forth. So it depends on what they did with it. Sometimes Like some of these people who are born that seem to know about the past or be able to predict about the future, they may have been people who created these states in previous lives. Now they don't remember that, but as an imprint of that, they still have some remnant of those psychic powers. They may not have the actual concentrated mind any longer. Even in this lifetime, when they develop it, if they become distracted, they can fall from that. Now, if they were to develop the vipassana, the ability like the fish to go through the calm mind without disturbing it, and they apply that to meditating on the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths. So it's a different way of saying, in the Theravada tradition, they say just meditating on the Four Noble Truths. But in the Mahayana, it says, the Four Noble Truths are your object of observation. How you're understanding them is empty of inherent existence. You're meditating on the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths. Anyway, so if you do that, it doesn't mean that that's called supramundane vipassana, but it doesn't mean you've reached a supramundane state yet. Because you mean a supramundane state would be one in which you have become an Arya being. You've realized it directly. But it can lead, like the demarcation I said of the path of preparation is when you have that tranquil abiding and penetrative insight, shamatha and vipassana, single-pointedly meditating on emptiness. So that's supramundane vipassana, because it leads you to a supramundane state. You're not yet in that supramundane state, and so you can fall from that. I mean, you can lose that concentration, but once you achieve the state of an Arya being, you've realized emptiness directly, that can't be lost. Some delusions, afflictions are ceased, abandoned from your mind, so they will never return again. And as you continue to meditate on that, on the path of meditation, ascending the various bhumis, so to speak, more and more of the subtler afflictions are ceased, so they'll never return again. Okay?
You're still accumulating karma.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, even when you no longer have any afflictions, you're still accumulating karma, uncontaminated karma.
Okay.
Right now, we're accumulating contaminated karma. Means the karma that we create, the actions we create, are motivated by a mind within which they're still grasping to true existence, contaminated by the grasping to true existence. So our actions, like I gave an example the other day at your house, if you had a nice new piece of wood, flat and sanded and everything, if you were to put sand on that and put a cloth on top and you rub that, it would leave some grooves in the wood, right? That's kind of like the movement of the mind. The sand is like the contamination of grasping to inherent existence. So that karma will only ripen within cyclic existence. It's called contaminated karma. That's the cause of our cyclic existence. Even virtuous karma you create, before you've realized emptiness, even the virtuous karma we create is called contaminated virtue. So it's not real happiness. It's just the result will always give you some relief from one thing, contaminated, changeable happiness, right? A changeable suffering. With uncontaminated mind, the actions you create bring about results of uncontaminated happiness. You might call real Dharma happiness. So the Bodhisattvas, after they reach the stage of Arya, when they become an Arya being, they create uncontaminated happiness, create the cause of uncontaminated happiness when they have that mind. But their mind is still, until they reach a higher level, there's still some faults in the mind that leave some little contaminated karma. Okay, now his turn.
I'm going to hold off on my question because I need to kind of rethink about it.
Okay, recalibrate.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure it will come out the way I.
Okay, and I forgot your name. Naga. You know what Naga means, right? Nag.
Cobra.
Can be. When I was at Sarah, when we were going to the fields, and they said, "Be careful, Nag." Nowadays in India, they leave off the final A of the words that we often know as like Ashoka. Ashoka was King Ashoka. The hotel in Delhi is now called Hotel Ashok. A lot of things are left, so they would just say Nag, meaning cobra. Actually, Naga can mean serpent, other serpents, but it also refers to one of the rebirth states, of technically located in the animal realm, but having incredible wealth. Sometimes certain spirits, when they do manifest in some form, they might appear as a serpent. Not all cobras and other snakes are nagas, but some can appear as snakes or serpents. They might inhabit some place like a tree or a stream, some clean place. And if you, like as a kid, maybe you make pee-pee on the tree or you put garbage in the clean stream, you can come down with all sorts of sores and problems. Nothing, no medicine cures. Only thing that can cure is like mantra, certain kinds of rituals that pacify the nagas that are afflicting you. I remember once at Kopan, one of our monks, African-American monk, we called Yogi, Delster Pryor. He had gone to Sarah J. afterwards. Anyway, American boy from Connecticut. And he was helping the monastery after the rainy season repair the road and somehow offended a naga that was inhabiting the road. And he came down with, I don't know, sores on his arm. Nothing helped. He went into Kathmandu for medicine. Nothing helped. And finally, Lama Lundup, who was one of the teachers at Kopan, brought Yogi, as we called him, to the newly installed young Tulku there at Kopan, who now we know as Yangtze Rinpoche. Maybe some of you know Yangtze Rinpoche? Do you know Yangtze Rinpoche? Yeah. Went once. So that time he was a little boy. Right now he's very, very tall. That time he was very small. And when he was first, he was the reincarnation of a great teacher in Lhasa who was the guru of Lama Yeshe, Geshe Zopa, all of his previous reincarnation. He was even the guru of his father of this life. Anyway, that's another story. So he brought him to this little boy, and Lama Lunda said, just let Yangtze Rinpoche blow on your arm. He didn't say mantra or anything. And the next day, all of the sores were gone because this boy had bodhicitta. So, yeah, nagas are certain beings. It can be used colloquial in general in the dictionary. You can say serpent, but they're actually beings in the animal realm that are incredibly wealthy and powerful and can be beneficial, can be harmful. Anyway, Naga, your question?
Naga. I see this cobra always protects me, so.
Good.
Anyway, any danger, I see the cobra, so I know somehow it's guarding somewhere. Thank you.
Yeah.
The question was, you were saying that Aryas keep having the clarity of mind and they become upper level into the bhumis, but then some of the Aryas, the big Buddhas known, they are also doing something bad, right? Like
sometimes doing bad things?
Yeah.
Like what?
Like some of the monasteries, some of the famous Buddha teachers, we hear all the claims on them.
Yeah. Well,
so
okay.
how is that their karma changed?
So, though, if they did naughty things, they're not Buddhas, first of all. Even in the time of the Buddha, various monks who had looked like they had achieved arhatship, had become, they'd reached nirvana. They hadn't really reached that state. They hadn't eliminated the delusions from their mind, and they might later exhibit acts of attachment, and anger and so forth. So sometimes in the in the different hearer traditions at the time, they said, that arhats could fall from that state. But the Buddha said, no, that's not. This is a mudra I learned in Italy, right? You don't move, no, you don't move your hand, just his finger. Yeah, that's it. Now you got if you actually have cessation of the delusions, actual cessation, like we were asking about permanent phenomena, right, Joey? Was it Joey? Well, who was asking? Chris, right? It said in the Abhidharma Kosha, it says permanent phenomena are such things as space and the two cessations, including also emptiness and other things. So two kinds of cessation. Analytical cessations, when things are ceased, so they never return, and non-analytical cessations means, like these arhats, they may have ceased the delusions temporarily by applying some antidote, but when that antidote was no longer functioning in their mind, the delusion would come back again. So they weren't actually arhats. So same thing when you see people in the monasteries. I don't think anyone in the monasteries ever say they're Buddhas. So you might think, as a devoted Buddhist, you might say they are Buddhas. Because they're Buddhists. Don't confuse Buddhist with Buddha, right? We may be Buddhists because we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but the monks and nuns in the monasteries and nunneries, even their teachers, may not be actual Buddhas. Maybe some of them are. The Buddha said in the future time, even in a degenerate age, we Buddhas will appear as teachers. So it's up to you to recognize us, even if we appear in ordinary form. So that's something very deep, sophisticated, esoteric practice, what we call guru devotion. Even seeing your ordinary teacher, even they have faults, what was I joking before? They have tooth caca and ear caca, and they may have verbal faults, or they look like they have attachment, or they slurp when they're eating, or you say, they can't be Buddha. Sometimes we don't have the karma to see actual perfect Buddhas. The only way they can appear to us is in some form which is ordinary. So that's one of the practices, very high practices of Buddhism. Although it's introduced often in Tibetan Buddhism at the beginning, and even to our students, what we call guru devotion, to the spiritual guide, it's a very sophisticated, hard to understand practice. So it's not something you have to worry about now, but so the disciples of those teachers that might look like they did naughty things, they might try to practice to see, still, they did that out of compassion, the naughty thing. They may have done it for some particular reason. Like in the time of the Buddha, at first there were no vows of the monks. Before he even ordained nuns, there were just the monks. You just followed the Buddha. And then some of these followers did naughty things. And the Buddha said, okay, from now on, anyone who does that has broken a vow. He made the vows successively upon certain bad behavior coming up. Those people who did these naughty things, they may have been actually emanations of Buddha himself, or great beings who consciously did these actions so that rules would be made so that other followers later would have guidelines. So you can't tell. Maybe the people who do even the wicked things, and they bring into mind to rules and regulations and so forth, they may have done that for a purpose. But maybe that's beyond the realm of what we can conceive of right now. So just have a couple of minutes. One last burning question. Did you have something? Who didn't ask a question before? Chris, do you have another question? Venerable?
No.
What does it say? Last call for alcohol. I heard that there was some, what was it, the Country Joe and the Fish? There was one in the refrain between one song and another, there's something, blues music, and then someone in the background you hear, "Last call for alcohol."
Maybe you can
Yeah.
help me to understand a little bit about this story. Sometimes I read through a lot of these stories. I'm struggling quite a bit about this story. How should we take these stories? Are they take it as a truth? Are they parables? Are they mystical events? Are they truthful events? So that, or they are just created just to teach us something?
I think you could take most of those statements as all of that. Maybe not from a Buddhist perspective. For certain practitioners, they see these are actual deeds that did happen, that the Bodhisattva, the former lives of Shakyamuni, did perform, and that they were related later to his disciples. Other people who don't have that faith that the omniscient mind exists, that such things are possible, that you could give your body or, these things, they might take them as parables and interesting and useful and still appreciate them like parables. From a Buddhist perspective, I think we would accept generally that they actually happen. But there's even some people who call themselves Buddhists would not accept them. Like, what am I thinking of? Yeah, like whether the Buddha actually, some people say the Buddha didn't teach the Mahayana Sutras. Have you heard that? Yeah. Only taught the Pali Canon, because the Bodhisattva teachings, the Mahayana Sutras, are not enshrined in the Pali Canon. Therefore, the Buddha didn't teach them. But there's a great debate about that in the Mahayanas. There are chapters by the great beings, Nargajuna, Buddhapalita, Bhagaviveka, Shantideva, all have chapters in their books called Tekchen Kadup, establishing that the Mahayana is the word of the Buddha, proving that the Mahayana was not just made up. And they would say, you Pali Canon, in the Pali Canon it says the Hindu scriptures are not the word of Buddha because they're not found in the let's see, they're not found in the Pali Canon or something like that. They take the same, let's see. I can't remember that particular argument. Let me leave that aside. I'll try to figure that out. But they would say other things. There are several arguments, like say, without the Mahayana scriptures, although the Theravada, the Pali Canon, accepts the existence of Buddha and the quote, the Bodhisattva, usually they call the Bodhisattva, not Bodhisattvas, because they say it's only the rare person who becomes a universal teacher. This is almost like a unique thing. Although they have the existence of that, there's no indication in the Theravada scriptures of the vast deeds of the Bodhisattva, how to practice, other than the Jataka Tales. In fact, they do. The Jataka Tales are part of the Pali Canon. So some people would say the Mahayana is not the teaching of the Buddha, but others would say definitely it's the teaching of the Buddha. So there are many, many questions like that. Yours is whether these are to be taken literally or whether they actually happened or if it's just like made up or something. So similar kind of questions. I think for some beings who have a deep insight into emptiness, it's said that when you have an insight into emptiness, you see the possibility of all of these things happening. There's not so much resistance, so much doubt in that. So, yeah, just last, what did they say? Last follow-up. Did you have a question? This gentleman behind, what's your name? Did you have a question? Oh, okay, you're just swatting away a fly or something. Okay, so we've reached the time limit. I'd like to try to, I went over a little bit yesterday, I'd like to try to end close to time. So let's just finish with a short meditation, dedication. We can call it dedication on the back of a yak. Did I mention that to you? Oh yeah, okay, so hold on. So there's sometimes when the lamas would come, traveling, they'd be on the back of a yak, travel, and someone would bring out tanka. They'd go through a village, someone would say, oh, bless my tanka, bless my mala. Usually it would require some long consecration ritual. They'd have to go into the house, make offering. So there were some texts that were called consecration on the back of a yak. That means while the lama's there's some text he can remember by heart. They're very short. Just toss some rice. So we're going to do dedication on the back of a yak. That means not so long so that we go way over, but something still effective. So relax your mind, relax your body. Recall that we've created some virtuous karma this morning, this afternoon. Even if you got angry at me at lunch, for saying something that was not politically correct or something, you may have regretted that later, so you created some virtuous karma. May these virtuous actions that I created by listening to the teachings, developing virtuous states of mind, and because it was motivated out of the thought at the very beginning that I'm going to listen to these teachings in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of others. We've definitely created virtue that will ripen within cyclic existence. But dedicating that to the ultimate goal of our achieving enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. It's like taking the reins of a horse, not letting the horse go wherever it wants, to the lower valley, clover field, or the river, or wherever it was. You're going to pull the reins, go in a particular direction that you wanted to go into. By your aspiration, by these virtues, may I quickly achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Sometimes your mind freezes up, you can't remember what you're doing, just remember, so these virtues I've created, they'll have an effect within cyclic existence. I'm going to invest those, dedicate them, like if you have money, you're going to dedicate it, put it in some safe place so it's for your children's college fund or for your retirement or something. It's not going to be wasted on other things. May these virtues not ripen in other ways, but may they always become a cause of my spiritual development up to and including enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. That's why I'm doing this. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll try again tomorrow morning. I think same time tomorrow morning, right? Oh, no. Tomorrow's different because I give a talk in the morning for the general. So it was suggested by Donna that I could, for the general talk about Jataka Tales this Sunday. So if you're interested, you could also come then. It'll make a long day for you, but then we'll start at what time? 10:30.
Well, 10:30 to 12 is general, and then 1:30 to 4:30.
1:30 to 4:30 is this continuation
Correct.
of this class. If you wanted to come to the morning session also, 10:30 to 12, but don't feel compelled. Thank you.
Thank you.
When Lama Yeshe was getting old, I remember at Institute of Lama Tsongkhapa once I looked at him and I said,